Welcome back to New Rockstars, I'm Erik Voss, and Marvel's next villain might have just been confirmed, with Giancarlo Esposito declaring at a fan event in the past week that he will be playing a role in both a Marvel film and a series, and now new claims that we will see Esposito in Captain America Brave New World, which would not only clarify the options for Esposito's role, but also answer some questions that were raised by the early Brave New World footage at CinemaCon with the mystery of some missing adamantium, we think. Yes, while fan speculation ran rampant that Esposito would be cast as the MCU's Doctor Doom or Magneto or Norman Osborn or Kang Prime, I went back through the timeline of everything Esposito has said, and I actually think he'll be playing one of two other characters who tie more into Marvel Studios' plans for the Mutant Saga and the X-Men, villains who would represent a fresh reset of Marvel's scale issues and play more closely to Esposito's true strengths as an actor. In this video, I'm going to explain why I think Giancarlo Esposito is actually playing Henry Peter Gyrich or Bolivar Trask. And if you're not caught up on your X-Men lore, Esposito would be a more political villain who plunges the Marvel Cinematic Universe into the Night of the Sentinels. So Giancarlo Esposito has been on a fan shortlist for Marvel villains for several years now, after essentially playing villains of every other franchise. Gustavo Fring in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, Moff Gideon in the Star Wars universe through The Mandalorian, and Stan Edgar in The Boys. In June 2022 at the Dallas Fan Expo, he was asked what MCU role he'd like to play, and he said Doctor Doom.
If you could play any character in any major franchise, what would it be?
Oh man, fantastic. Take me over in this moment, Doctor Doom.
A few months after this, in August 2022, Esposito hinted the TGH Superhero Car Show and Comic-Con in San Antonio and gave a very peculiar speech when he was asked the same question, which was recorded by the Countdown City Geeks on TikTok.
So, I have not worked for Marvel yet. I've been in a room with them and talked to them. And to answer your question, I think what they do is on the lines of that mythological journey that Joe Campbell talked about, who happened to be a friend of George Lucas, that George Lucas put into his stories. They do the same thing.
So from here, Esposito just starts off on a bit of a rant about stories that save the world from greedy corporations, for the people, by the people, future leaders who are in this room right now. It's about lifting each other up and inspiring each other. And no one, I'm sure, is quite sure how this relates to Marvel, but I am ready to vote for this man for whatever he's running for. But then he finally gets back to the question.
So, there's the talk of Magneto. There's the talk of Dr. Freeze.
Oh my.
There has been talk of, who else are they talking about over there?
Dr.
Doom.
Victor Von Doom.
Doom.
Yeah.
And there is Professor X.
Now, again, this would be in August 2022, and this was just a few weeks after Marvel Studios unveiled their multiverse saga plan with Fantastic Four, Avengers 5, and Avengers Secret Wars. Now, yes, he did say Dr. Freeze, which is a DC character. Not really sure how that got on the list, but also this would be before the Jonathan Majors drama went down, long before Marvel Studios' September 2023 Palm Springs retreat, where everything was re-strategized and scaled back by the studio. But then in February 2024, Marvel Studios confirmed their Fantastic Four lineup, led by Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, and to many of us at that point, it debunked any thinking that Giancarlo Esposito would be playing Victor Von Doom, because would Disney really recast the hero and villain of The Mandalorian as the hero and villain of the Fantastic Four? That would just be kind of weird, right? And then in the months after this, we got CinemaCon footage for Captain America Brave New World, and then in early May was CCXP, where Collider reported that Giancarlo Esposito revealed on the Thunder stage of CCXP that he will be appearing in a Marvel project, but not in the role many fans have laid out for him. Collider said that being fan cast as Professor X from the earliest whispers of mutants making their way into the MCU, Esposito says he'll play a different role, teasing that it's coming sooner rather than later and better than you can imagine. And according to other attendees at CCXP, Esposito described the role as, quote, original and new. Now, it was not clear what Esposito really meant by that. Like, was the character he playing someone who never appeared on the pages of comics and was an entirely new invention by Marvel Studios? Or was it just a character that was relatively new to him, without any major live action depictions that he could remember from being in a major film role before, a character that he could truly make all his own? But then in the past week, Esposito attended the Phoenix Fan Fusion and was asked again about joining the MCU in a future project, and he said this, quote, the MCU has knocked on my door and it's a role you won't predict. It will be teased and there will be a series afterwards. So this told us that it will be a role teased in one film in which he perhaps is not the primary character, but then a character that would come back in a series to play a more more significant role. And then on May 30th, Charles Murphy of Murphy's Multiverse claimed that Giancarlo Esposito's character would be introduced in Captain America Brave New World, which is coming February 2025, which is only about 8 months away. And this outlet claimed that when Matthew Orton was brought in to do rewrites for the fourth Captain America film in December 2023 for additional shooting to occur in the months following that, Esposito's role was created at this point with this draft and brought into this story now. Now, Murphy's claims are unconfirmed by the studio and not corroborated by any other major media outlets, so take them with a grain of salt. But if they are true, there are 2 series scheduled for 2025 coming to Disney Plus right after Captain America Brave New World comes out. Those series are Daredevil Born Again and Ironheart. In Daredevil Born Again, Wilson Fisk Kingpin will obviously be the primary antagonist to Matt Murdock Daredevil. For Ironheart, Anthony Ramos is playing Parker Robbins the Hood, and Sacha Baron Cohen has been reported to appear as a demon that Robbins serves, Mephisto. And I know all you guys are going to say that I'm forcing Mephisto into another video, but I think everyone forgets that Deadline actually confirmed Mephisto in an article that they based on actual confirmations from actual studio sources. They said Mephisto, not me. Meanwhile, Captain America Brave New World has its own set of villains, including President Thaddeus Ross, which we know from McDonald's Happy Meals will be Red Hulk in this movie, and Samuel Stearns as the leader. So how would Giancarlo Esposito fit into that as a Marvel villain? He couldn't be Norman Osborn if his first movie is not a shared Sony production, since Osborn falls under the Spider-Man grouping of characters whose film rights are owned by Sony. So if Giancarlo Esposito is playing a supporting role teased in Captain America Brave New World, I think the perfect role for him would be either Henry Peter Gyrich or Bolivar Trask. And we did just get it confirmed that Giancarlo Esposito will be in Captain America 4. We saw a set photo that we will not show you, but just to describe it, it is what looks like Giancarlo Esposito's stunt double and what looks like kind of a cargo pants military outfit, not that different from what we saw Brian Cox wearing as Colonel Stryker in X2, which suggests that Giancarlo's character is going to have worked within the military establishment and might be just like a completely different take on someone like Gyrich or Trask. Both Henry Gyrich and Bolivar Trask are political X-Men villains with significant roles in the X-Men animated series in the 90s, and both appeared in the recent season of X-Men 97. And the fact that in all of his statements, Giancarlo Esposito has brought up the X-Men and the world of the X-Men in these political rants of trying to make the world a better place, it does kind of feel like the ideologies that could be bastardized by either Gyrich or Trask. Every video I put on YouTube, I'm obviously wearing clothes. Like, it's just this weird little thing I do because I'm not a fitness vlogger, and also clothes are great, especially when they're comfortable and they look good, which is exactly what you get when you buy clothes from Cuts Clothing. Ooh. Cuts Clothing doesn't do the whole splashy logo thing. It's just a simple X on the seam to let you know that your shirt's up to snuff and nothing more. That means that you can wear Cuts Clothing no matter what you're doing. Working, playing, working out, going out, Cuts has you covered. And if you're the type who likes all of your clothes to be comfy, Cuts Clothing has a ton of options for you, from hoodies to pants to joggers and jackets. All of Cuts Clothing's products are made with the same attention to comfort and fit, and their minimalist style makes them the perfect addition to your wardrobe. If you go to cutsclothing.com now and use code ROCKSTARS at checkout, you can save 25% off your purchase today. Once again, that's cutsclothing.com with code ROCKSTARS at checkout to save 25% your next purchase. So Henry Gyrich was introduced in the Avengers comics in 1977 as initially a political liaison between the Avengers and the US government, and actually at one point he becomes a member of the Commission on Superhuman Activities. This is in Uncanny X-Men 199, and this is the group that forces Captain America to resign. But fans best know Henry Gyrich from his continuity in the X-Men animated series, appearing in the very first episode of that series in 1992 as a government official who was trying to create an official mutant registry, and on the side was developing a secret Sentinel program that the president ordered him to shut down, but he still uses the Sentinels to kidnap Jubilee. At this point, we are introduced to his associate, Bolivar Trask, who is really the engineer behind the Sentinels' creation. We later learn his DNA is tied to Master Mold, which is a giant Sentinel robot who produces all the other Sentinels. In the season 1 finale, the X-Men confront Gyrich and Trask when they're trying to send out another wave of Sentinels, these ones made out of non-metal substances so Magneto can't stop them, but these Sentinels go rogue and start attacking all world leaders to try to replace their brains with robot technology, and then Gyrich and Trask are able to flee this conflict. But somehow Trask is allowed to return to the United States in the final episode of this series, speaking out publicly against the mutants at the Mutant-Human Relations Summit, and he shoots Professor X with an energy disruptor. So we find Gyrich shortly after that in the first X-Men 97 episode from this year, still incarcerated. Cyclops, Storm, and Jean Grey offer to reduce Gyrich 25-year sentence by 10 years in exchange for his cooperation with finding Bolivar Trask, who's still on the run. They later find Trask out in the desert with another version of Master Mold. Later on in this season, after Sinister and Bastion use Trask to unleash a wild sentinel upon Genosha, Gyrich gets moved to Mexico City, where he is attacked by Rogue and then shortly after suffocated by Bastion. Meanwhile, the X-Men find Trask in Madripoor when he is quoting J. Robert Oppenheimer because Trask is feeling guilty for bringing about Sentinel tech upon the world. But we discover that Trask has been infected with Bastion's techno-organic virus, turning him into a Prime Sentinel. When we last see Trask in X-Men 97, his Prime Sentinel body is still being studied by Beast. Now, technically, both Bolivar Trask and Henry Gyrich have been depicted in live-action films before. Bolivar Trask, of course, was played by Peter Dinklage in X-Men Days of Future Past as the creator of the Sentinels back in 1973, who is assassinated by Mystique, leading to this future timeline where Mystique's and Rogue's DNA would be used to turn future Sentinels into perfect, shape-shifting, power-absorbing, mutant-hunting weapons. Also, in 2006's X-Men The Last Stand, Bill Duke played a different Trask who leads the Department of Homeland Security. Henry Gyrich, meanwhile, was the name of Senator Robert Kelly's aide in the very first X-Men film in 2000, played by actor Matthew Sharp, as kind of an Easter egg reference to the character from the comics and the animated series, but really nothing more than that. We only ever met the form of Henry that had been taken over and posed by Mystique when the Brotherhood of Mutants kidnapped Senator Kelly in the helicopter. At the end of the film, actually, a news report mentions that Henry Gyrich's body was found mauled to death, suggesting that Sabretooth had killed him. But think about it, a fully realized version of Henry Gyrich could be the role that Giancarlo Esposito is hinting at, because he would represent a new type of threat in an MCU Mutant Saga that I actually talked about in last week's X-Men movie video, because they are moving forward with a script for an X-Men film. And I think we've had plenty of cosmic threats in the MCU, from Thanos to Kang and now to Galactus. Marvel, meanwhile, needs to move forward with a grounded villain in a suit who can bridge us from this political drama of Captain America in this upcoming film to someone who can really be the face of superhuman registration in Daredevil Born Again, something we know that Matt Murdock was not a fan of in that amazing speech he gave in She-Hulk, and someone who could appear in Ironheart as well. Like, we could learn that Henry Gyrich is the head of the DODC agency that Agent Cleary is a part of from Spider-Man No Way Home and Ms. Marvel. And remember, Matt Murdock has a history litigating against that agency on behalf of Peter Parker and Happy Hogan. This could lead to him becoming a villain of an Armor Wars film, and he could end up being the face of Sentinel technology in this upcoming X-Men film that just got the green light. The Captain America Brave New World footage at CinemaCon included President Thaddeus Ross mentioning a stolen item from Japan, and my theory at the time was that Brave New World will feature a subplot about stolen adamantium. Maybe currently there's a Gyrich and a Trask working behind the scenes in the government to build Sentinels made out of adamantium, and maybe we'll learn that the corpse of Tiamat will serve as like the function of Master Mold. Like, it could be an island base where they 3D print adamantium Sentinels. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I personally believe that Giancarlo's best work was not as the theatrical caped villain Moff Gideon, but really as a colder, quieter manipulator in a necktie, Gustavo Fring, Stan Edgar. As Gyrich or Trask, he wouldn't have to live up to any expectations, and he could truly make the role his own, and he would be perfectly set up as the man behind the first wave of Sentinels that begin hunting mutants when the Mutant Saga truly begins. Comment down below with your thoughts on all this. Follow me at EA Voss. Subscribe to all 3 channels of the new Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.